He's the first foreign head of state to visit the holiest site in the Jewish religion, the Western Wall, with a senior Israeli official. And not just any official, braving the Jerusalem rain, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu escorting Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro for a tour of the wall on the second day of his four-day visit to the country. And Eylon Levy is live for us in Jerusalem following this visit. Eylon, the fact that Netanyahu is accompanying Mr Bolsonaro here, what's the significance of that?
Tracy, it's a hugely significant development in the history of international recognition of Israeli control in Jerusalem. That's a process that began with President Trump's visit here in recognition of Jerusalem as Israel's capital and has only gathered steam since. Ordinarily, when foreign leaders visit Israel, they don't necessarily visit the Western Wall. And if they do, they normally define it as being a private visit. Netanyahu was very friendly with Austrian Chancellor Sebastian Kurz. When he visited, it was a private visit. Prince William was here just a few months ago in the summer. He visited with the rabbi of the Western Wall. The Vice Premier of China was here recently. He visited with a senior official from the Foreign Ministry. Mike Pompeo was here recently. He visited with Netanyahu. That was a watershed moment. But today, indeed, the first foreign head of state visiting the Western Wall, of course, the retaining wall of the most holy site in Judaism, which is, of course, the Temple Mount right behind me here with Netanyahu. So a very significant moment. Does it mean recognition of Jerusalem as Israel's capital? No. Does it mean recognition of Israeli sovereignty in Jerusalem? No. But is it a strong symbolic affirmation of Israel's connections to this site, which the Palestinians demand as part of their future capital in East Jerusalem, and most of the international community considers occupied territory? Absolutely, Tracy, it does.
All right, and Eylon, of course, with the latest escalation on the Gaza border and being, we can't ignore, 9 days out from the Israeli elections, how does the timing of this visit serve Netanyahu?
Tracy, let's separate this into two things. Are any Israeli voters looking at the images of Bolsonaro at the Western Wall and deciding that's what's going to swing their vote and make them vote Netanyahu? No. Do voters look at Netanyahu, see a leader they regard as indispensable, as a world statesman, as a senior statesman who raises international's diplomatic profile and brings diplomatic gains for the country? Absolutely. And this is part of a very clear strategy on Netanyahu's behalf to show him as the face of Israel, someone who brings respect and honor for Israel. Undoubtedly, the question of the escalation around the Gaza Strip and concessions towards Hamas have not been well received by the public, so a welcome opportunity for the Prime Minister to pivot towards something that is, in all credit, his strength.
All right, Eylon Levy, thank you for that insight. You've got a beautiful view there. We'll let you go to that. Now, journalist Miriam Spritzer joins me for more. Miriam, great to have you with us. What's the commentary inside of Brazil about Bolsonaro's visit to Israel, his first foreign trip outside of the American continent?
Well, you have two sides of the commentary. You have the one side that is very happy that he's going after a promise that he did on his campaign, that Israel was going to be one of the first countries he would visit once elected president. On the other side, you do have a lot of Brazilians who are criticizing and saying that that might get in the way of the relationship that Brazil have with Arab countries that are now criticizing Brazil as well. So you have a very divided view on his visit to Israel, but overall, the people that elected him, which is the majority of the country, is very happy with that visit.
So then what are Bolsonaro's interests in this relationship with Israel? Of course, knowing that this is the first country that he's visited outside of the American continent, how important of an alliance or a relationship is this for Brazil?
Now, Bolsonaro has always been very outspoken about his support to Israel. The first time he visited the country years ago, he was so impressed with how Israel has developed in comparison to Brazil that is so rich in resources and has been stuck in time with infrastructure and so many things. So in that sense, Bolsonaro does hope to bring from Israel this technology and developments that could be useful to help our drought areas as well as our security systems and so on. And I think for Israel, Bolsonaro wants to bring the support of one of the biggest countries in South America.
Now, we know that Bolsonaro has backpedaled from his initial enthusiasm to move Brazil's embassy to Jerusalem. What's behind the cold feet?
Well, there was a lot of criticism from Arab countries that threatened to end the commercial relationship with Brazil. Now, Brazil exports a lot of meat and chicken for these countries. And so the agricultural and the agriculture ministry and that area of the management of the government suggested that for now, we do only an office in Jerusalem. But Bolsonaro says that doesn't kill the idea of bringing the embassy to Jerusalem, but it's not something that is going to be done overnight. So I think he's testing the waters in some way to see how the criticism will be done.
So then what are Bolsonaro's views regarding the Palestinians? How will he navigate that sensitive issue?
Well, what he says is that he doesn't want to offend anyone. So today, the Palestinian authorities told the embassy that is in Brazil to leave the country and go back so they can talk and see what to do. And Bolsonaro said they have the right to do that, although that is known to be a very big diplomatic issue. Now, I think he's not that worried about that reaction because he believes that the relationship with Israel is much more significant. The concern really is commercial with the other Arab countries.
All right, Miriam, thank you for that insight. Of course, we're now hearing the Brazilian perspective. We heard the insight from the ground, and joining me in studio, our very own diplomatic correspondent, Mike Wagenheim. Mike, looking at what Netanyahu wants to get out of this meeting or this visit from Bolsonaro, what are his main priorities?
We're talking about him on the news, so that's at the top of the cycle right now because we're a week and change away from an election. So every story that Netanyahu can generate that is of some positive mention and will generate positive coverage not only here in Israel but around the world. Good news for Benjamin Netanyahu because means he doesn't need to talk about the corruption allegations surrounding him. It means he doesn't need to talk about his standing in the polls right now, in which he still trails the blue and white party of Benny Gantz and Yair Lapid. It's an opportunity for him to show his statesmanship, an opportunity to show that Israel is breaking through in areas of the world that they might not under a given leader, according to Netanyahu, this particularly being South America, Latin America, and a huge Latin American market at that in Brazil. So all of these reasons for Netanyahu to celebrate tonight.
Having a Brazilian president that's supportive of Israel is in fact a change. So what's the impact of this more broadly?
You know, that remains to be seen because we don't know how Bolsonaro's election might have a ripple effect throughout South America. There are these whispers, these murmurs that we're starting to see a change in South America toward more a rightward bent away from the leftists, the socialists. We've seen anger, obviously, in Venezuela, chief among them, but in other areas as well. Socialism going out, capitalism somehow coming back in style. So Bolsonaro might be the first domino. That would certainly be music to the ears of Benjamin Netanyahu and probably the Israeli electorate at large. But as far as just the Brazilian market goes, it's a doorway into Latin America, which is something that Israel has really lacked for a long time.